Hello.
Hello, Ahmed.
Hey. How are you doing,
How
Imran?
are you?
I'm good.
Good, good.
Cool. So this is Islamabad Rock City's first podcast, and we're going to be talking about Vital Signs Volume 1. Is that the right name for the album? Vital Signs 1?
Yeah, yeah. I think that's what they call it, Volume One.
Awesome.
It always reminds me of like Led Zeppelin Volume One.
Right, right. Yeah. Cool. Yeah, let's get into this. I'll start maybe with a few questions for you, and then we can flip it around. Sounds good.
Yeah, yeah. Sounds excellent. Yeah, let's start with you, and then we'll move to my questions as well.
Awesome. So I guess first question for you is, what are your early memories of listening to this album? Which songs you came across first, and maybe the place you were when you heard it, or the country, or whatever. Whatever your first
Yeah.
memories are.
The first time I ever heard Vital Signs, actually, the very, very first time was summer of '87,
Wow.
and at the time they had done the music video for Dil Dil Pakistan, and I was in Pakistan at the time, near August 14th, when that song came out, and they did the first video, and I had vague memories of watching that particular video. So for me, it was like 1987. That's the first time I ever heard of it. And then the album itself, I got in 1992 or 1991. Yeah, 1991. So about like 2 years after, I suppose it came out, right?
Yeah, yeah. Nice.
And that's when I heard the entire album in its entirety.
Awesome. And what were your first impressions? I know impressions kind of change with age and time, but
Right, right, right.
yeah, do you remember like your first impressions as a kid, and then maybe moving on, when you got older, how they changed, or did maybe they stayed the same? I don't know, but that's just a question for you. Like,
Yeah. As a child, it was like pop music. Had a bit of a Beatles slash emo kind of feel to it.
right? Yeah.
There's but I guess now looking back, the bizarro nationalistic songs, because me and you both grew up listening to English rock.
right, right.
So
Yeah.
like English and American rock, they don't really have nationalistic elements to it. And if there is a song with a nationalistic element to it, I'd be kind of weary of it.
No doubt, no doubt. Yeah, that's true, man. I mean, that
Yeah,
that Dil Dil Pakistan song was people joke it's like the second national anthem.
yeah. And it was a good song. It's just this, but now looking back, that's the only difference. Otherwise, though, all the pop elements are just beautiful, really masterfully done.
Yeah,
Like absolutely masterfully done. And I think it's is the production was Royal Hayat, right? Like he's also the
yeah,
keyboardist, right?
right. And Shoaib Mansour as well, who wrote some of the
Yeah,
lyrics. Yeah.
yeah. And he wrote some of the lyrics, and I was impressed because the first album he ever listened to was Pink Floyd's The Wall, and I
Ah,
kind of went, yeah.
yeah.
So I don't, and I'm gonna throw it back to you. It's like I never heard The Wall like in its entirety, right? So I
Mhm.
listened to it through
You know
its
what?
entirety, like
Yeah,
you hear the hit singles on radio,
that's
and
interesting because my
yeah,
wife was mentioning recently that they were really into Pink Floyd, and one of their songs, I think not on this album, but on another album, was very heavily inspired by that whole sound. So that's interesting. But yeah, carry on. Sorry.
yeah. So I mean, did you hear anything like that in the album itself?
Uh, honestly, I haven't heard a lot of Pink Floyd. I know The Wall,
Right,
and I know a few songs. Heard Dark Side of the Moon,
right.
but kind of. I mean, for me, it's different. I kind of see them as more like the Smiths because the melancholy and the irony in some of the lyrics
Yeah.
and the guitar. But I'll get to that later. But I don't want to kind of ruin your flow. But
No, 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 no. It's all right. It's all right. And I actually wanted to hear your opinion about it because I thought that would be very interesting. I want to see if he heard anything like that in that music, and he didn't hear it, and neither. And you're right, absolutely right. I didn't hear it either, and it's so amazing that you compared it to the Smiths,
Yeah,
because there are so many elements of the Smiths in Vital Signs.
right. It's like pop, but it's the songs are not always happy. Like a lot of them are melancholy, kind of
Right.
bittersweet, sad songs.
Yeah.
And then my next question for you, which actually kind of segues into the next question, is what do you think of Junaid Jamshed's voice?
The, throughout all the albums, or just Vital Signs 1?
Let's stick to Vital Signs 1, I guess. Yeah.
Right. The first, to be quite honest, I liked his voice. I thought his
Mm.
voice was just so perfectly timed. Um, there's that song, what's it called? Tum Mil Gaye,
My favorite
right?
song. Yeah.
Yeah, same here. My favorite song too.
Oh, awesome.
And
Yeah.
like, like if you listen to it, like he's singing the song, and then like I think it's like the bridge to chorus, and he goes, ah, like that, just that. I was like, oh my god, that blows my mind.
Yeah.
It was just a well-crafted pop melody song, and the way he inserted that in there, I was like, that's so original. He created his own element. So yeah, I would say that in that he was finding his voice. If you look at it in the entire career of his albums,
Yeah.
but in that initial album, he kind of like trusted his gut on that particular song, and he just like
Yeah.
you feel
Yeah.
like he thought of that. Like nobody told him to do that, and he just
Right.
did it.
Yeah, like very raw and very just going with the flow kind of thing. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
For
Almost like a punk. It's the most punk element in that album.
sure. Right, it is. And I was going to ask you what your favorite song was, but you just said I just love that song because of the. It's almost like kind of reminds me of U2's song. What is it? I finally found I can't remember what the song's called. Only to be with you, something, and then
Yeah.
yeah, like I did all this stuff to end up with you, but then you're still not good enough. That kind of message.
Yeah.
Yeah, but this was like more melancholy and just with the guitar and everything was like very Johnny Marr. And,
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
video was
That's interesting.
great. I
That
just love the
yeah.
whole thing. Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting that you had that. You said Johnny Marr, and that's because I remember, like, for so long we were so big, huge fans. Me and you both were huge fans of the Smiths, like
Yeah.
massive fans.
100%.
And to this day, I'm like, yo, Smiths are the most amazing band of all time. And it's interesting that you made that parallel. Like, oh yeah, the guitar playing was, and it is. I wouldn't. You're right. Like, it's not. It doesn't sound anything like Johnny Marr, but in spirit, it was a lot
Spirit,
like
exactly.
Johnny Marr.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Nice. So that being said, you've heard the album many times in your life. Is there
Mhm.
any song you didn't like off the album, or was it just I love every song? Tough question.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, I think the song that took the. I always thought it was Red Red One was by UB40, and
Right.
I find out it wasn't by UB40. It was like from a singer that's even older than UB40.
Yeah, I think it's like a
Neil
classic.
Diamond.
Classic song, Caribbean
Yeah.
song, whatever.
Yeah, Neil
Reggae,
Diamond did
yeah.
it, but
Mhm.
yeah. And for me, it was I only knew the UB40 version, which makes it even more terrible.
Right, it does.
So, because it wasn't even UB40's best song, I have felt like it was like
No, not
they
at
had
all.
so much better songs than that. That
Yeah,
was actually their worst song.
it was, but it's just one of those things where it just got popular, with the video and
Yeah.
single and everything.
Yeah,
Um,
because I think when that song came out, maybe this is how it's weird to, I guess, the way we look at it, right? Because I remember the 1994 album of UB40. I can't remember the name of that album, but it had all the hits that they constantly played on MTV Asia. So I
Right.
thought like those songs were way, way better than Red Red Wine. But I think a lot of people haven't really heard those songs, or they had lost interest in UB40 by then.
Yeah, I mean, personally, I didn't. I haven't listened to a lot of UB40. I remember one of my cousins in the UK had their albums,
Yeah.
And I heard a little bit more when I was on vacation in the UK, and then I was like, oh, okay, these guys are kind of different to what I thought they would be, you know,
Yeah.
because all I knew was red wine. So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
cool.
Okay. So, go on. So let's see. What's your next question?
Yeah, I was gonna ask, have you seen the film Khuda Ke Liye? Because there's a connection to vital signs, but yeah, have you?
Yeah. You know what? I have not seen that film. Like, do you know how many times people have said, "Watch that film, watch that film,
You
watch
have to
that film,"
watch Imran,
and never watched it?
right?
You know, it's even worse. Like now you're really gonna hate on me. What I have seen is the Vital Signs drama series.
Oh God, God bless you, taking one for the team, man. That's a true fan.
Yeah, so that I guess that makes it more terrible that you had this amazing piece of art that's associated with vital signs, and then you
Yeah.
have something that was kind of like really cheesy, stupid. You know,
Well, that
I
was
think it was
just
like,
yeah. They were just cashing in into their popularity, right? They were everywhere. Like they
yeah,
were in the Pepsi commercials. They had the drama
yeah, yeah,
series, concerts, and God knows what else. You know.
yeah. So you could totally felt it was like a really like I guess that's a like as a, because we're rock fans from here, and then second of all, we're like super punk in our vibe. We're like, oh, we really hate commercial rock. We
Right. Yeah.
both hate commercial rock, and this is the most commercial thing you can think of. Like that time when Vital Signs were there, they were like the biggest sellouts on this planet.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely, man. Cashing in, as they say, cashing in.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
we fell for it. We were like, yeah, I'll eat it up.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess we were too young, but
Yeah,
yeah. I always found the interesting thing with that film was Shoaib Mansour was the director who he actually wrote Dil Dil Pakistan and was the producer, one of the producers for Vital Signs One.
right.
And the music of the film is done by Royal Hayat.
Oh,
Um,
is it?
and the film is supposedly based on Junaid Jamshed change to when he became religious. So the film basically has two brothers who are in a pop band,
Right, right,
and
right,
one brother gets influenced by, like an Islamic extremist or whatever, and goes into that direction. The other brother
right.
stays with the music and goes to the U.S. To music school. And at the same time, 9/11 happened, so some things happened to him. But it was a very smart and intelligent look at music and religion, and whether it's allowed or not allowed or different
Right,
views.
right, right.
But it was done in a very smart way, where it showed the different uh, views of both sides, and
Right.
I kind of like it for that reason.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
yeah,
Do you know? And actually, that's I wasn't going to ask you this, but I guess I should ask you this. Me personally, I've never heard Junaid Jamshed's Nasheed albums because I'm not I don't like Nasheed. I
yeah,
just
fair enough.
I
Yeah.
think it's not my cup of tea. And you've heard his Nasheeds. How was his voice then? I mean, how did it fare?
Uh, I'm kind of 50-50 in a shade, so I don't say I hate them, but I don't go out and buy Nasheeds or download them. But I thought his voice was very good because he kept it very simple, and I just thought his voice was always amazing, even up
Yep.
till he passed away. So yeah, I kind of enjoyed his. Actually, his Nasheeds were my brother used to play Nabil in the car
Mhm.
when we used to go for like Juma prayer or just coming back from somewhere. And
Yeah.
he always had it, we used to joke because he used to make these mixes with like Bollywood songs, and then next thing you'd see Junaid Jamshid Nasheed pop out of nowhere because he liked him so much that he had to include it somehow. And my sister was on a trip to Wales recently, and they had one of his old CDs, and
Yeah.
you'd hear all these other funky Bollywood songs from like way back in 2000, whatever, 4 or 5, whatever it was. And then Junaid Jamshid Nasheed just comes up out of nowhere. So I just thought that was kind of funny family memory. But
Yeah.
yeah.
I would love to hear a mixtape that Deep Cut's done.
Oh
That
yeah.
would be my favorite thing on earth. Like, how did this guy come up with this?
Exactly. Well, we got him on. Maybe we can get him on the next podcast and ask him some
Yeah,
questions.
yeah. Like, how would you? I want to know what this particular you know collection would be like. Like that would be the funniest thing on earth for me.
Right. Trust me, it's funny for us too, but
Yeah,
as a family. But yeah, my sister just was. I was just cracking up when she told me. Only like last week, so that was quite funny.
yeah, yeah.
All right, awesome, man. I mean, that's all the questions I had for you. So flip it around and over to you, man, as the interviewer.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So the funny thing is, most of the questions that you asked, I would ask the same questions. Actually, vast majority of them, just one or two that are different.
Sure.
But I liked some of yours that were different. I was like, oh wow, I didn't think of it that way. But yeah, I should make a comment. I'm glad you saw it that way because I could kind of relate to it in that way too.
Right.
So my first question is, when was this first time you ever heard this album?
So I was kind of like you. I heard a couple of songs first before I heard the album. So obviously I heard Dil Dil Pakistan because same thing, used to go to Pakistan probably around the same year as you.
Yep.
But I really came to my attention when I was at my mamu's wedding, and I was the savala in that wedding, which for people who don't
Yeah,
know is the kid who kind of sits with the groom the whole way through the wedding. Like it's normally like a nephew or a relative of some
yeah,
sort. And in the music video, they had the song "Gore Rang Ka Zamana," "Kabhi Hoga Na Purana," etc., etc. So when the wedding video came out, I was like, "Who's this group?" And my cousins were like, "Wait, that's Vital Signs, the same guys who did Dil Dil Pakistan." So around 90, 91, that's when I got into the album. But I didn't like it at first, interestingly. But the funny way I got into it is really weird. So we had a Super Nintendo connected to our TV, but we didn't have any volume coming out, so you could only have color without the volume while you played the game, because I think we had a cable missing or something. So there was no volume, and Deep Cut used to play the album in the back while we were playing Mario. So we'd be playing Mario, and this melancholy, ironic pop album's playing in the back, and that's how I heard. And I was like, wait a minute, wait.
Yeah.
First, I was like, what the hell is this? Right? Like, I don't want to hear this album while I'm playing Mario. And it started building on me, it started getting to me, and I started loving it. And I started and later we fixed the Super Nintendo, whatever, and but it was such a weird way of getting into an album.
Yeah. Do you know what that's really funny is? That's a common problem in the 90s with Super Nintendos and Nintendos that weren't of that system. Like if you have NTSC and then you have a PAL system or something crazy like that.
Yeah.
Like there was a common problem. Like you would get color, but you won't get voice or something like that.
Oh, and right. I thought it was just us. So other people had that problem too?
Yeah.
Okay.
So in the background that you had Vital Signs 1 playing, that's a specific 90s kind of thing. I remember even the first time I saw the video of Dil Dil Pakistan, it was my dad had recorded it on VHS, and he would play it later again, right? And so I remember just, my dad was like young. He was only like, I think like 10 years older than the guys themselves. I was like, oh, this is something new. This was something exciting. So he was kind of, like you can imagine like how a 32-year-old would like get into something that's for young people.
Yeah. We're doing the same thing now, right? So yeah.
Yeah. So for me, that's how it was. Like even as a 32-year-old, and I think we were just talking about like certain albums, and we're kind of like out of the scene now. We're out of the music scene because we're not 22 anymore.
Right. Yeah.
And so when you hear an album, and you're like, I think like the last time you and I were talking about Kendrick Lamar, we're like, yo, that is a good album.
Yeah.
It was the first time I think I think for me and you both, it was the first time in a long time that we connected with youth culture.
Definitely, and I felt the same with the Vampire Weekend, which I only got into like recently, and I just can't stop listening to it.
So like you see, like that's how the connection I make. Like I look at my dad as a 32-year-old man, and then I was like, yo, I was young just like him,
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
And it was years ago, and that's I think those are specifically. It's when you listen to that album and you go back and you start thinking like, how was this album really written? who wrote this? How did Shoaib Mansour come up with this kind of thing? What influenced these guys to make the music this way? You know, and
Yeah.
because these guys were making the first rock album, like they were the first band in Pakistan. Like, all right, let's see what we can do with this. So kind of like a 1950s kind of feel to it.
Yeah, you're
If
right.
we were talking English music,
Yeah. Yeah, I hadn't thought of it that way. That's a good observation, actually.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, uh, you said that at first you hated it. How has the album grown for you? Like from when like over the years, like when you were in college and you would listen to it, or when you were started first working and you would listen to it, or when you got married or whatever have you. How has it changed for you in that way?
Yeah. I mean, that's a good question. I mean, when I was young, it was just a music album, which I liked, and obviously played Mario along too. But
Yeah.
later on, I kind of started appreciating the whole album, song by song. That was the first thing change that happened.
Hmm.
And then just the bittersweet, melancholy type of vibe of it is
Right.
something I didn't really understand until I think I might have been over 20 um, when I kind of picked that up.
Hmm.
And I don't know, like now, like with the Junaid Jamshid's passing and everything, it's even more melancholy for me. Um,
Right. Right.
but not in a bad way, but just in a kind of bittersweet way. And
Yeah.
the thing I liked was Salman was involved, and I'm a huge fan of Junoon. And
Right. Right. Right.
I play some bass guitar. I just That's my favorite instrument in music. And I thought
Hmm.
his impact on the album, I kind of understood it later. I didn't probably understand it at the time. It was quite big too. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, overall, just a beautiful, melancholy. I think there's irony in there, which I don't know if other people pick that up too.
Mm.
But I feel there is. You know what I mean?
Right.
In some of the songs.
I don't know. When you had just mentioned this, and I wanted your comments on this as well. That when you said, "Oh, it has Salman's feel to it." Did you know that Salman was kind of like, I guess with Royal and Salman, there was like a big conflict going on as how they wanted to produce this particular album. Royal had a direction, and I think Salman Ahmed had another direction. And I think it was like Salman Ahmed's direction was like, "Yo, I want to really rock out, man. I just
Right.
want to rock
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
out." And
Yeah.
I feel that in a lot of the songs, like Royal has really calmed him, like subdued his sound. He wouldn't let him venture out of that thing.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. It's yeah, he's definitely different when he does his post Vital Signs career.
Yeah,
Yeah, you're
I'd have to agree. But then and you're absolutely right. There's like some elements, like I think it was the famous song about Pakistan Air Force.
yes, yeah,
So in that particular song, you hear, Salman going a different, you know,
a different
Salman going a
way.
different way
Yeah,
altogether. Like you can hear like Salman really rocking out in that element. So yeah, did you, and I can see, yeah, where you can see like, oh, that's his sound. That's what he was trying to make, and that's what he got. How he got better. I mean, I think when you listen to that particular album, you can still see elements of like how he's trying to imitate his idols, and he hasn't really found his sound.
yeah. I think that's probably accurate. He was, he was just one of the band members, but I just kind of liked, even though it was subdued or whatever. I think he like on Tum Mil Gaye, the guitar is quite good. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
it just from a you can say skill kind of level.
yeah, yeah.
That's not that easy to play. So I just kind of
Right, right,
appreciate
right.
little things like that. Yeah. So
Yeah, Yeah, and you're absolutely right. Like he was an accomplished guitarist, you know.
Oh, big
Like
time. Yeah.
he knew like, okay, this is how you make a good song. This is what you need to do. And yeah, so and you know what? That's a good way to transition to my next question. I think going back to Tum Mil Gaye, did you feel that? What was your favorite song on the entire album?
Yeah, that's the one. It wasn't. It wasn't when I was a kid. When I was a kid, it was Goreran Kazamana because of that
Yeah,
the whole wedding and my cousins and my family. It was all tied into that memory.
right,
But
right, right.
as I heard the whole album, and again, this is after I was probably in my 20s when Tum Mil Gaye became something that I really loved. Um,
Yeah,
so yeah, it's interesting how things change with time and age. Uh,
yeah. Yeah. So I guess that's and yeah, you're right. You're right. I think there's a melancholy element to it. Probably the most Smiths kind of sounding song there is.
for sure.
So you know what? You're leading to the next question: is what's your least favorite song?
Same answer as you, man. Samjana. So, I just thought it didn't fit. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
it didn't fit the. Like, if you hear every song, there's a certain theme or a sound to it, if that makes
yeah,
sense. And that song was just a bit like, you know, I don't want to say clown music, but it was just strange.
yeah. I think that song in itself it really throws off the beginning of the album
Yeah,
because it's so terrible.
right. It's the second song, so yeah, you come across it like
Yeah,
straight away. Yeah.
you're like the highs of Dil Dil Pakistan to the lows of. Um, and again, I don't think we're dissing the song itself or whatever, but I think it just, I mean, my thing is with that particular song, like you guys could do so much better. Seriously, that's what you guys come up with.
Yeah, I know. And they came up
You
with a
know?
lot of good stuff, so they could have just
Yeah,
left it off. Left it off the album.
yeah. You know what would be really funny? Like, like how white people have these songs. They're like white bands, I should say, American or British bands. That these bands have is like they'll record all these songs, and then there's 5 or 6 songs that never make it to the album, and they'll release an EP out of it,
Right.
or like 20 years down the line they'll call them quote
Unreleased.
unquote.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. What do you think? Do you think there's anything in the Vital Signs One vault?
Oh, that's a good question, man. There must be because from my understanding of bands and music, there's always a lot more records that make the album. They make
Yeah,
30 or 40, and then they cut it down to what they want on the album. But I could be
yeah,
wrong. Maybe they just really did just those tracks. But I have a feeling there's probably more. Yeah,
yeah.
somewhere. You
And
know
I
what I
think,
mean?
yeah, especially throughout the years, you would think that in their entire career that they probably have some selection of songs that are completely recorded, and they're like, no, we don't want to use this.
For sure. For sure.
I guess this becomes the mission of Islamabad Rock City to find the
We
Vital
need to find
Signs,
this out. Yeah, exactly.
the Vital Signs basement tapes.
Gotta hit Mr. Royale Hayat on Twitter or something.
Yeah, that's funny. We just came up with this idea. It's a lofty goal, but whatever. We'll see if this thing picks up steam. That would be great.
Yeah.
And we're gonna look for the basement tapes of Vital Sign because I'm thinking there's got to be some stuff out there. There's got to be some
There
really
has to,
really
man.
good.
I think there has to, right? Yeah.
Yeah, like some fantastic stuff. Like, oh wow, that's like I can't believe they would. Yeah, that's a pretty good song.
Yeah.
You know. So, leading on to my, next question. Speaking of basement tapes and producers and production,
Mm-hmm.
what did you think of the production of this particular album? Like the production entirety of it.
I think it's the best produced album in Pakistan's history.
Right. So you really think that Royal Hayat just hit all the highs with all the
Oh, big time. I mean,
Yeah.
he's gone on to do Coke Studio and
Yep.
film soundtracks, and he's very, very talented.
Yeah.
Um, and I also need to mention that the bassist Shazad Hassan was also involved in some of the production, and he also works on Coke Studio sometimes.
Oh,
Um,
okay. Wow. Wow.
so, and then you had Shoaib Mansour, of course. So, yeah, I mean, I thought the production was really good, and I've never seen a better produced album come out of Pakistan, in my opinion, just
Hmm.
from a production point of view.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, as far as production's concerned, it was really he hit like all the highs. Like it was,
Yeah,
you know, you could tell the overuse of synthesizers in there, so it's very of the times. Or it could be budgetary reasons too. Like we can't get a drum player at that in 1988
right. Yeah, of course.
Pakistan.
Yeah.
It's not gonna happen. Like now, you could probably get dime a dozen drummers,
Oh, big
but
time.
then, yeah, like back then, there weren't that many great drummers around. So I mean, maybe that's why there's so much synth production in it. But which as I got older and I started turning into more new wave, um, those synth kind of sounds helped me develop it. And I know you didn't go this direction, and I did, and I went like the house kind of music and things of that, where you just listen to like I guess continuous loop of certain sounds and certain scratches, and you're like, wow, that's pretty deep, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Do you listen to any particular DJs, just strictly hip hop DJs?
To be honest, I don't. Um, I have been trying to see if I can find DJ Cool Herc's early stuff online somewhere.
Right.
So there is an interest growing now of maybe doing that, but historically, I actually didn't. I mean, I appreciated DJ Premier and
Hmm.
DJ Muggs, like say his collaboration with Jizza,
Right.
stuff like that. But like as just in looking out for DJs and just music on its own, instrumentals. Yeah, I never really got into that, to be honest.
Wow, wow. You
Yeah,
know what? I'll be honest with you, Ahmed. Like, if you get into just instrumentals, it's a whole different job. It's a whole different scene, man.
yeah,
It's like, wow, your love for music goes even further away. Your love for hooks in certain songs, certain things, certain elements. You're like, wow, I'm so glad that they can spin it in that direction. I'm so glad that they can feel in that direction. I'll give you an example. One of my favorite DJs is from Japan. His name is DJ Crush,
right.
and especially like this was like in the early O's and late '90s, early O's, mid O's. There's an influx of a lot of what's it called, underground rappers, and they would do a lot of collaborations with DJ Crush. And he was like, he was this guy from Japan, and he was doing the old school techniques, like let me bring out a record and try to mix it in and try to come up with a sound just from records. So yeah, just do check him out. Same, and it was so funny in San Francisco. There's a parallel scene that was going on in Japan, and they were doing it with DJ Shadow and Dan the Automator, and
Right.
Japan also had DJ Honda going on. So it was like such a cool, similar, separated
Yeah,
by geographical locations, but they were doing the same thing at the same time. And that became a sound of that time.
that's pretty cool. Yeah, I'll definitely check that out. It's something I missed, but yeah, that's the great thing about music, man. You can always go back and find it, right?
Yeah, you can always go back and find it. And I think like certain sounds and even like a lot of subsequent albums came after Vital Signs One, and they were trying to imitate Royal Hayat's sound. Would you agree or disagree?
Yeah, I would definitely agree. And it was like, why would you want an imitation when you can have the original? You know what I mean? So I kind of
Yeah,
just stuck to Vital Signs at that time, and then much later I got into Janoon, but that's a whole different story. But,
yeah. And the funny thing you mentioned that was because there's a whole history of these guys that are just minor players. They made minor hits, minor stuff, and
oh
it's
yeah, yeah,
completely lost
yeah, yeah.
because all people remember is Vital Signs and Junoon. And I mean, in a way, it's a scene, it's a sound, it's an element that's it was very organic in its in its heyday, and that organic sound is the same stuff that even as an adult, that's what I really look for. Is like, oh wow, that's like we were, like you and I were talking. We were both grew up listening to the Seattle sound,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and then that there's so many bands. I don't want to say that they sound the same, but you get the same energy from it, right?
Right, right. Yeah.
And it was coming from that scene. So I think we would, if we would, it would, we would remiss if we lost all these kind of sounds and these kind of elements from the scene.
No doubt, man.
So yeah, I think it's important in a way, in a certain way that like, hey, somebody contributed something, somebody did something. What was their what drove them to do it?
Yeah, I always think about that because music is interesting because there's so much going on. It's about the people making it, but it's also about the time. It's a reflection of society.
Right.
Sometimes it's just the thoughts of one, two, five, 10 people. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? It's like I always found it interesting that Manic Street Preachers made a whole album out of their ex guitarist who passed away or has been missing for 20 years or whatever, and they just took his old poems and just made an album out of that.
Yeah. And
So
you know what? I'm just gonna go on air and say this. Thank you for introducing me to Manic Street Preachers.
no problem.
They are a freaking amazing band.
They are, yes.
Again, I mean, we living on this side of the planet, we don't hear. We know of the Britpop, and we just think of like Blur and Oasis. But there's a lot of bands that were coming from that era. Like Radiohead was there.
No doubt, no doubt.
The Manic Street Preachers, because they were like Radiohead at that time was like third string. They're on different levels now. They're a completely different band now.
Yeah, yeah.
But they were at that time in the '90s. There was a third string band.
Right, yeah. They're just coming up. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and same with Manic Street Preachers. They were the fourth string band, but they just they went like Radiohead, somewhere completely different, where they're not trying to go and say, okay, I'm going to try to capture that sound again from the '90s.
No, they change. Just keep changing and evolving.
Yeah,
Which is
and
amazing.
Blur does the same thing. They keep changing and evolving.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, even with Damon Albarn and Gorillaz, that is quite what a big change that was, and what a great
Yeah.
band that was too.
So you know what? This was going to probably be my whole other podcast. So I will save this question for you some other time.
All right.
But I just give it to you right now, and then you can think about it, right?
Okay. Yeah.
So we talked
leave it with
about
me. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So I'm going to let it fester, and one day we'll come back to this one. And I think it's something that I want to really discuss with you and really get the feel of it, right? Because that's going to be for me. It's going to be a fun episode. So when we talk about these particular three bands evolving, Oasis didn't evolve.
Yeah, that's definitely going to be another podcast.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I used to love Oasis, but I have a few things to say about them.
Exactly. I think I'd really love to hear your answer.
Yeah,
as a hardcore Oasis fan,
big time hardcore. Yeah.
Yeah. Waiting for that next level album.
Yeah.
And them not coming through.
Yeah, I mean, first song I learned on the guitar was Wonderwall. My cousin taught me.
Yeah.
So I was a big Oasis head in the '90s, but that's definitely a good question. We can pick that up next time. So
yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. So something we'd want to talk about Oasis. Yeah. So I like their hits. So this will give me a chance to listen to their album entirety. Both. I think the first two, and I'm just out of curiosity's sake. I think they released a couple albums in the mid '00s that were supposed to be spectacular, that brought them back to fame. That I never listened to. That I'm actually curious. I'm really curious about that album.
Yeah, I've got a few things to say about that. I think it's better left unsaid for now, but Yeah,
Right.
Oasis is complicated actually, but that's a good idea. We can pick that up next time.
Yeah, yeah. So we'll have some fun with Oasis and see what we can come up with over there.
No doubt, no
So,
doubt.
going back to album productions and how bands evolve and so on and so forth. What did you think about the production? Production time wise, like they had started this album in '87 and they finished it in '88, and it was released in '89. Do you wonder like how the recording process is going on? Uh, what was going on there? Did they have trouble? Was it rehearsing?
Hmm.
Like it seems like a long time
It
for
does,
songs.
it does. I have a feeling they had a lot more tracks, um,
Yeah,
and they had trouble finding the tracks they want on the album and keeping it in a balance.
yeah,
Because you have sad songs, you have obviously patriotic songs.
hmm
You just have songs like Gora and Kasamana, which it's just there's no depth to it. It's just a kind of like a pop song.
yeah,
Um, so I don't know. I think they had a lot of pressure on them. I think they had a lot of writing on this album, so they wanted to get it perfect. It was literally like if this doesn't work, everyone just has to go on different directions. Which actually leads me to Nusrat Hussain, the original guitarist who never got on the album and became a pilot and became successful. But it was literally like if this doesn't work,
yeah,
everyone will have to go into different careers. So I
yeah,
think they
yeah,
just took their time. They probably tweaked and rewrote and redid a lot of things, and I guess they must have had at least 30 tracks or so, and they cut
yeah.
it down to the ones that made the album.
Do you know what it comes down to? And I think we both. And I was thinking about you actually when I watched this movie. I think did we both watch Smile together, or I know you recommended it to me.
Smile? I don't. Who's in that?
The movie about, I'm sorry, I don't think it's called Smile, or the movie about one of the Beach Boys, Brian Wilson.
Oh, right, right, right. Yeah, of course, of course. Yeah, 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 yeah. I forgot the name of it. It's on Netflix. But anyway, yeah, that movie. Uh,
Yeah, so in that particular movie, they had a lot of scenes where they were kind of like, this is the production, this is how production goes. They
right.
go kind of in depth into how production really goes, and I don't know. I mean, whenever I see documentaries, that's the thing that I love watching is like how productions are done. Some kind of monster, the Metallica documentary. I was really about like, oh, how is this song produced? How did they
Oh,
do it?
you know what? If you
So
like that, you should check out the Defiant Ones on Netflix. Especially Jimmy Iovine's days as an engineer with bands like U2, uh,
right, right, right.
Bruce Springsteen. They talk about some of those famous albums and what he had to
Right.
go through to, make them sound the way that they
Yeah.
do. So, yeah.
So in that sense, I always wonder what that particular recording process must have been like. Like, where did they record this album? Was it like a shack hole, or
Yeah.
where was this particular studio? Because I think what's really funny is they in the old album, if you look in the inside of the cover, they have like where this album was recorded. I think was this Lip Studios in or EMI Studios in BECHS Karachi or something like that.
Yeah, it's got to be Karachi or Lahore. That's the only two
Yeah,
that I can think of.
yeah, yeah. So
Uh,
there was like a studio somewhere in Karachi where these guys were recording. Like, what the hell? Like, I always think, like, what was going on? Like, they're in Zial Huq's time and they're recording a freaking rock album. Like,
right, maybe that's why it took so long.
yeah,
Probably doing it in an
like,
underground bunker, or something.
yeah, exactly. What was in that studio, man? Like, I didn't even think about that. And you know what made me think about it? Well, have you ever seen the Foo Fighters documentary Sound City? Well, it's not Foo Fighters, but
No, I haven't
it's
seen
they.
that, but I've heard of it. I've heard of it.
Yeah, just check it out. That is again, if you really love music and how music is produced, what makes sound, what makes certain things beautiful and amazing. that's an album you should check out. I mean, that's a documentary you should check out. And likewise, I mean, that's what I want to see. Like, what was it in that time? They're like, yo, this is what's gonna sound beautiful. This is a hit maker. Like almost like a Dr. Dre kind of deal with Royal. We're too far removed producers.
Right. Yeah, that's interesting, man. I think we need to try to find that out, maybe.
Yeah.
And, amongst other things.
Yeah. So besides, and I think you mentioned the right thing over here, that they didn't know what they were doing. They didn't know where they were going.
Right.
And I never looked at it that way. That's so interesting because you're right, the stakes were so high. They were like, if we don't make this, we are going to go back to doing freaking
9-to-5 jobs. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
We're gonna have like 9-to-5 jobs. Like they were fighting that. Like like a guy that's like anybody that's today, like people that we knew that were in music or whatever, or they had that kind of mentality. Like, you know what? As an artist, I don't want to have a 9-to-5 job. I just want to have a job that sustains.
Exactly. Yeah.
And again, it's they were finding a happy medium. So I guess you're right in a way that when they did come, they just sold out big time, as much as they possibly could.
Well, you got to make that paper, man, or those rupees.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you got to make that paper, Paper boy.
Yeah, and not to mention that Junaid Jamshed became a superstar. On his own, as well. So.
Yeah, he did. And but did you ever listen to his solo albums at all?
Not really, but I heard a few songs here and there.
Yeah.
In people's cars in Pakistan, or music videos in someone's house. Again, in Pakistan while I was on vacation there.
Yeah. So you've heard like going back and forth. You've heard and seen like, oh wow, that's tied into that particular sound or that particular element.
Exactly. Yeah.
Wow. See, because I never went like since '96 all the way to 2007. I never went back to Karachi. So all my Karachi memories are tied into the early '90s, right?
Ah, interesting.
So, yeah. So I don't have any of those like it's kind of funny. Like I did listen to a few Vital Signs album songs and so on and so forth in that latter part, and it just didn't connect. I don't think it connected the way it connected when I was in Saudi Arabia. So, and going back and forth to Pakistan. So that's kind of, but I think I was listening to more English music that was more relatable to that time.
Yeah, I mean, it was the same for me. I heard them, but I didn't like the later albums as much as Vital Signs 1.
Yeah. So yeah, I would say the same thing, that that particular those latter albums, I didn't feel it connected the way I wanted to connect. So, which leads me to my last question, and as far as production values, and I think we were talking about, did you hear any Pink Floyd elements that Royal had really loved? And did you? And I think of one song, and I want to ask you: do you feel the same way too? Was Ye Sham? Did you feel like, because it's a long song, right?
Right. Yeah.
Did you feel like it was like a Pink Floyd element to it, or no?
I do now after you mentioned it.
Yeah, that's funny.
I never thought of it that way. But
yeah.
Yes, I can completely see that. I can see that now.
Yeah, because that was the only Pink Floyd type song. Because I heard Pink Floyd's The Wall again, and it's I was zoning in and out, and I was kind of listening to it, and I was like, oh wow, it's a very expansive album. I can see why someone would really love this album, and that was Royal Hayat's favorite album. And you could see like that kind of element in there, like in that Ye Sham particular song. So yeah, that's the only one, and I think even with Salman's guitar playings, they're subdued and stuff like that. But how did you feel when you compared to say Dark Side of the Moon?
You know what? I think Dark Side of the Moon is kind of different.
Right.
It's kind of it's a concept album,
Right.
and I can see the influence, right? But
Yeah.
I think the way I see it is, you take any band, right? So if you take Guns N' Roses, you can see Rolling Stones, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So every musician grows up and listens to music, and then when they
Yeah.
make their own thing, they combine what they want to do, but it's always influenced about what they listened to when they grew up.
Yeah.
In At least in a small way, you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Even if they're trying not to get influenced, it's it's ingrained in you. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
I can
Yeah. I'd say.
see the
I'd say.
connection,
Yeah.
but I think it's different. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Different.
Did you? Yeah. Did you feel like the album itself had a lot of Fleetwood Mac kind of elements more than say Pink Floyd?
This is my problem. I haven't heard Fleetwood Mac,
Right. Right.
so I can't really comment on that. But I will definitely check
Yeah.
them out and
I
see.
think it's yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's one of our favorite thing. Just call it soft rock.
Right. Yeah.
A genre that doesn't exist anymore. I don't know why. I don't know. I grew up listening to soft rock.
Well, there's nothing wrong with soft rock. Brian Adams.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, I don't think there's anything wrong with soft rock. It's got pop elements, pop hooks to it,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
and if it sounds right, it sounds right, man.
Exactly, man.
That's I don't think there's anything wrong with it. But I mean, with that particular soft rock, I mean, they go back and they make those kind of like really soft rock, melodic, melodramatic kind of songs that the Smiths do too. But the Smiths, I don't know. I think they go to a darker element
Oh,
compared to like the
yeah.
Fleetwood Mac.
Smiths were
This
just
is
miserable. You know what I mean?
yeah, yeah. This is so, and that's my personal opinion about as far as the elements are concerned. I heard more Fleetwood Mac than the Smiths, I would say, but I can see like how I said like Smiths had a more darker element, but they were kind of really essentially like um, Fleetwood Mac.
That's
So
interesting. I'll definitely have to check out Fleetwood Mac now.
yeah,
Yeah.
just I would probably really enjoy the Rumors album.
Okay. All right. I'll make a note
Yeah,
of that and I'll check it out for sure.
yeah, yeah. It's a pretty cool album. What's really funny is like we're two guys that are not really. We just like listen to songs that we read or music or like magazines or books, and then we're like, oh, let's go check out that song. Let's go check out this album or that album just because we heard somebody say something about it.
Right.
And
Yeah.
that's what I really like about you, like and you turned me on to music, and that's kind of fun. Like I just gave it a chance. Like I just
Yeah.
said, okay,
Yeah.
let me
Well,
enjoy it.
you turned me on to like Elliott Smith, which is like one of my favorite artists now.
Yeah,
So thank
and
you for that. It's like I never heard of him in the UK, and I was like, wow,
yeah,
how can I not have listened to this guy before? Especially if you love the
yeah, and
Beatles and stuff like that. He's just
yeah.
an
He's
evolution
very
of that. Yeah.
burlesque.
Yeah.
And it's really cool if you check out Elliott Smith's first punk band, Heat Miser. That is some really good punk, man. That is some really really good punk. And I'm a huge punk fan.
Yeah.
Like I'm like
You know what?
especially
Yeah, we need to do a punk episode.
yeah. I think we're ready for a punk
Yeah,
episode,
because
man. I would
I'm kind
really
of up to speed now. Thanks to you largely over the last year or
yeah.
so. I've been
You're
listening to a lot
welcome.
of
You're
punk.
welcome.
So yeah, yeah,
Yeah. I have this, because it's I think in the UK, it's not that well known about this entire punk scene that was happening in the United States from, like, say, I think 1981 all the way to 1988. Or, yeah, and I would include certain, like, 89 and 90, like, the whole scene from 1982 to, say, when Nirvana really broke up, but
yeah,
broke off and just became a monster. And I would say 91, 92. Like up until then, there's like this entire catalog of just fantastic underproduced albums.
for sure, for sure.
And I think, and I mean, again, going back to Vital Signs, it's a very simplicity DIY kind of feel that I felt with this these particular bands from 1982 to 1992 in the United States. So it ties back to my first album, Vital Signs. I'm like, yo, these guys are raw. They're doing something that nobody's done before. And
Yeah,
as an 11, 12-year-old to figure that out, that's pretty cool.
it is. It is. It's like they're pop, but the punk spirit of, like you just said,
Yeah,
doing something for the first time. It's
yeah.
that's what punk is about,
And
rather than the music stuff.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
There's so much of good punk that we missed because we weren't introduced to that.
Exactly.
But we
Yeah.
got it in Vital Signs. Like, that was it. That was, wow, that's so crazy that you guys would come up with this idea and do this album.
Yeah, for sure, man. So
Yeah. So, I mean, those are the only questions. Actually, I have just one last question. I think we can close it off from here. And
Yep.
in this particular section, we talk about our favorite albums that we've been listening to recently. And I like your choices. I think you were listening to a lot of underground rap. So if you can just give me a breakdown of your favorite album that you were listening to.
well, recently I saw a Tribe Called Quest documentary on Netflix called Beats, Rhymes, and Life. So I was listening to all
Mm-hmm.
their albums, and I started with with the first one, and then I went on album by album. So that's what's recently been kind of taking my time.
Right.
MF Doom's forgot the name. Dog Food or Food.
Yeah, yeah. Food. Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah.
Food.
Food. I've been listening to that. I went back and revisited Black Star, which is Mos Def and Talib Kweli.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I've been listening to that quite a lot. I still am listening to Vampire Weekend's Contra, which I can't get
Okay.
enough of, and it's been over a year.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's a good album. It's a
Oh,
really
it's amazing.
solidly good album.
And I want to learn a punk on the guitar too. So,
Right, right,
yeah. I mean, aside from that, checking out Wu Tang's new album.
right.
It's a few months old now, but yeah, that's all I can think of off the top of my head. I mean, there's probably more, but I just can't think
Yeah,
of
yeah.
them. Yeah.
And that's interesting that you said those albums. And it's so many questions, right? Like, what do you think of MF Doom's flow?
I think it's great. The way I came across it was, I think it was either on the internet or somewhere I saw like a mini documentary about rappers and how they construct words.
Yeah.
And I think it's called Vox Deconstructed or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And how they use syllables, and certain rappers kind of rap offbeat, and it's really
Yeah, yeah.
difficult to do. And he was in that list. And on Spotify, there was a playlist called from that little documentary called Vox Rap Deconstructed. And it's got
Wow,
Eminem
wow.
and it's got MF Doom, right? So that's how I came across
Yeah, yeah.
MF Doom, and his delivery is amazing.
Yeah, yeah. His delivery is amazing. He is so solid.
Yeah. I mean, if he had Dre behind him, he'd be like the biggest star in the world. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah, yeah.
oh man, like you know what I mean? Like, I mean, I love Nas and everything, but this guy might even be more talented.
Wow, wow. So you know what? That already gave me another idea for another, future podcast. Is Jay-Z versus Nas?
That's an easy one for me because it's gonna be Nas all
Yeah,
day. But
yeah. And you know what? I wouldn't mind. Like, I think for you, I think you should try listening to all of Jay-Z's older albums, like the Blueprint.
I
one.
haven't. Yeah, I haven't. I haven't heard. I think I only heard his first album, and then after that was just singles. So
Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Like, go back and check out those albums because Jay-Z's just ripping it, man. I'm like, oh my god, this guy's just killing it. This is like crazy next level gangster, stuff, man. I'm like,
Yeah.
oh my god, this is just, he's just, because but you're right. The person that really enjoys like rhymes, they go always with Nas.
yeah.
But
I like that stuff. Yeah.
yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right. But Jay-Z he wasn't boxing out of his league. He was trying to maintain. And he was doing a pretty damn good job of maintaining.
I'll definitely need to check him out then properly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's something to, just if I would love to hear your take on like oh wow, this Jay Z had some and I was like you, like I was like, nah, I don't really care for Jay Z. And I went back and revisited those albums. I'm like, oh my god, Jay Z was, because I think at that time Jay Z had more pop sensibilities than Nas.
Yeah, he always did. I think. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's easy to dismiss somebody that has like pop sensibilities, but you're like, okay, let's try to give it a fair chance and check it out. Is it really that good?
Right. Well, I'll definitely check that out then.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
awesome,
yeah.
man.
So yeah,
So I guess we should wrap this thing up. What do you think?
actually, I was going to tell you my what I
Oh,
was listening
sorry, I
to, and I was
completely
going to
forgot.
ask
Yeah,
you.
sorry. So yeah, what are you listening to nowadays? What albums?
And yeah, and I'll give you a little history. I'm listening to a punk band called Nation of Ulysses.
Okay,
And are you familiar with Discord Records?
I'm not. I have to say, yeah.
Okay, again, it's an American side of punk, and they had like some of the first real. I shouldn't say some first real, but they had some of the first few formative punk bands in the United States. Like these guys spawned off an entire movement, right? So they came out of Discord Records, and they had like bands like Fugazi. I don't think Bad Brains was not on there.
I know Fugazi. I like Fugazi.
Yeah, so they weren't on. Bad Brains was not on there. I think some of the earlier bands that spawned like the entire emo movement of like the early, to mid to late '90s. I think the name of the band was the Rites of Spring. So these guys came from that same record label, and again, it's I mean so you've never really heard any of these guys like Rites of Spring or this kind of stuff, right?
I have not. I have not. No.
Yeah. So I think again with the United States, a lot of rap and rock because it's such a big country. There's a lot of regional sound. In England, there is a lot of regional sound, and you don't really get to hear it, right? Unless somebody tells you about it.
Yeah. I mean, unless it gets on the charts or it's in a big city like Manchester or London,
Mm-hmm.
you could miss it. Yeah.
Yeah, you could miss it. You could easily miss it. So I think in a lot of ways that's what these bands are. Like, oh wow, this is we missed this sound, or we were not we're sleeping on this sound. I think I was what was that? There's an album. I was like, yo, why did we sleep on this particular album? I don't know. And it was a rap album in the early '90s or mid '90s. I think we were listening to very commercial side of it, and we missed some great albums in the
Oh,
early to mid '90s
definitely, definitely.
where we both discovered them later, right?
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
We're like, oh my god, stuff is so good. This is so amazing. Like I really hate the fact that I missed, what's it called? It's a rapping duo. Well, actually, there's a DJ and there's just a rapper, Eric B and Rakim,
Yeah. Me too. Me too.
a Gangstar, like
Yeah.
just like really well polished albums and really well polished, rhymers. You're like, oh, these guys spawned a generation of rappers. They created their own sound. It's a sound that many people, I think, in the New York scene were imitating, or they were just like, that's the sound. That's what we're looking for. We're going to take it a whole different directions, but that's the sound we're looking for.
Interesting.
Like you can hear it in Wu Tang. Like there's like elements of Gangstar, and definitely there's
Oh yeah.
actually
Yeah.
a lot of elements of Gangstar.
Yeah. 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 That's true. That's true.
Like he was the first to me. He was like the first gangster rapper, man. I was like, oh my god, this guy's like, he just made so much amazing stuff. And not to say that we were listening to bad stuff. I think what you had mentioned, we were still listening to great Tupac albums, right?
Right. Right. Yeah.
So, and I don't know if we mentioned this before, but I think that'll be another episode because I know I'm a big Biggie guy, you're a big Tupac guy, and we would probably do like a Biggie versus Tupac.
Oh
episode.
yeah. You better come ready, man.
Yeah, you better come ready. You're right. And there's so much of that Biggie stuff that you introduced me to, and vice versa. I mean,
Yeah. Yeah.
I'd already come I remember telling you the first time, like, yo, I love Biggie, I love his flow, and you're like, what? This shit is whack, man.
Yeah, I was
And you were
obsessed with
yeah,
Tupac, man. I still am. He's my favorite.
yeah. He's your favorite, and you're the first guy I know that loved Me Against the World, and I always find that hilarious. Like this guy loves Me Against the World.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
It's he's the most button down collared kind of guy I know, and he looks like yo, Me Against the World's my favorite album. All right, man. It was fun talking with you, Rasul. So let's do this again sometime.
Yeah, for sure. So
yeah,
it was great fun, Imran. And this is Islamabad Rock City, where we just talk about music. This is the first episode. Let us know what you think. And it was a lot of fun. And I guess I'll catch you in the flip side.
Yep. Yeah. Same again. We'll mess around with this. I hope that you get an outro and an intro song on your guitar because you're the only musician between me and you.
Well, musician is no musician in progress. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
All right.
You know what? The other thing is, and I wanted to add this again before we do go, is that we do have both of us have. I have a lot of Desi rock friends, and I think because we call this podcast Islamabad Rock City. I want to interview my friends that really love rock music that are Pakistani and ask them, like, what's your favorite album? What makes you go like, yo, that's some crazy, amazing stuff? Because I think as Pakistanis, we have that. There's an element that we all can share and we can all bring to that side. Like, oh, we all love rock music and these are the elements that we love about rock music. Because I think, first of all, there aren't that many Pakistani rock fans.
True.
I think it's again, but what me and you had discussed, we're the last generation. So the last generation of Pakistani rock fans, and I'd love to hear what people have to say. Like, I like this album this way, and I like this sound that way.
Yeah.
So I think future episodes, I'd love to do something like that with you. And again, what you had mentioned, like I'd like to bounce it amongst our friends to see, like, hey, what can you guys tell us that we can do better on this podcast?
No doubt. And eventually we will have guests and we will have a lot more content and varied content. So looking forward to doing this in the future with you, man. So pleasure as always.
For sure. Yep. Thank you so much,
right.
Ahmed.
Take care.
Let's we'll go next round, see what we come up with.
Cool. So signing off, this is Ahmed and Imran from Islamabad Rock City. Thanks for listening.